My name is Ben Dobrowski from Green Hill Collective Farm in East Sutton, New Hampshire. We are a 100% solar-powered, certified organic small family farm. Well, we market some of the products mainly at local area farmers markets and farm stands, but we have in the past sold products to restaurants as well as natural food stores in the area, and have also done a CSA program, which we have discontinued this upcoming year, but we have marketed that way in the past.
Farm. My name is Amelia Gardner. I manage a small farm in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. It's also a residential facility for adults with disabilities. We have a very diversified farm. We have about 3 acres and vegetables, a small orchard. We grow a certain amount of pork for ourselves and the community food pantry. We do a little bit of beef and eggs, and we have a pet rabbit. And we raise goats for milk to produce for our goat milk soap business that we run on the farm as well.
You farm.
I'm Derek Owen. Do you want me to spell it, dude?
No. Where do you farm? Where do you farm?
Hopkinton, New Hampshire.
Great.
Animals and people.
And vegetables.
And vegetables.
Vegetables.
Yes.
Do you sell from the farm or do you sell
We
off?
sell from the farm and wholesale our eggs to the Concord Co-op.
Okay.
Good
But
question.
we got to what we call growing people, which is an interesting issue. But people who come here learn how to work and use tools.
Some things I struggle with the most would be accessing capital for investments in the farm. Being a graduate of state university, I am definitely left with some looming student loan debt that kind of inhibits me from really investing a lot of the money that I'm making doing this back into the business. Instead, it really goes towards paying off those debts, which is tough. I'd like to see farming be considered a public service, just like teaching or serving in the military or police departments. I believe it kind of all relates back down to benefiting the population as a whole. So why shouldn't we be treated the same way and have that debt reduced so we can keep on doing what we're doing? But that isn't the case, so that's definitely one of the things I struggle with the most.
Say there's 2 main struggles. The first one would be labor. Finding people who are willing to work at a rate that we can afford to pay them. The work is pretty strenuous, and you work in all weather conditions, and that's very hard. I find that these new generations are not as willing to work as hard as past generations have been. The second thing I find to be my main struggle is being able to produce stuff at a low enough cost that people can afford or that they're willing to pay. With most of the products in grocery stores being subsidized, it's a real struggle to convince people to pay $2 more a pound for something, because that's actually the cost it took to grow it or produce it versus what they can pay for it in the grocery store.
It is actual work, and you do work hard, but you see results, and that's very important in the development of people. Because a lot of the labor where people go to work to earn a living and get a roof over their head, it's mundane work, and they're very glad to have a day off.
I was going to say something about work because Derek has used that a lot as far as people come and work. But from my view, I think work has a bad name, a bad image. And I like to think of work as, it's not so much work as it is what I happen to be doing at the time. And when you call it work and you mean it's a terrible labor, I think it gives it a bad name. But if you call it work as something that's satisfying and something that has meaning to you, then it's not such a bad thing.
And to look back on several generations of what she's calling his work, it used to have people working together, and
Yes.
they'd actually sing or whistle or whatever, and work was more of an accomplishment in their minds because they saw the results.
Satisfying.
Plus, they had the company of each other.
Well, generations ago, I think farming was really family-based. There was many farms spread across the countryside, and everyone had their own farm, which sustained their own family and community, and it was just kind of part of life, and definitely our model of agriculture has changed over the years, but I hope future generations can kind of get back to that family-oriented farming that used to happen. I mean, it seemed like it brought families much closer together and made them a stronger unit rather than so fragmented as it seems many of today's families are. But yeah, it gets down to the root of our existence, I feel like.
I think a generation ago you saw a lot more farms for one, and a lot more mid-sized farms. I think a few generations before that you saw a lot more family farms, you know, people really growing for themselves, for their neighbors, more for the community. And as industrial agriculture took off, you saw a lot more mid-sized farms, you know, dairies going from 30, 40 head to 100 or 200 head, where now you see dairies with thousands of cows. Now you see either really small farms or huge farms that are completely mechanized. I think that what we'll see in the future, hopefully, is a little bit of a pullback from some of the industrial farming because of the lack of nutritional quality and the treatment to animals that's happening in the meat industry, and people will be more supportive for smaller farms to become more mid-sized farms so that they have a little bit more know and understanding of how things are produced and how things are treated, because that seems to be a concern, and rightfully so.
Well, unfortunately, there was a few generations ago, more people were involved in the actual labors of the farming. As far as looking ahead goes, because of our politics and the government, I see no chance for really improving relationships between people and the land. We hope that will be the case, but because of the need for people to recreate, it takes precedent over work. And part of the allure of the farming, small-scale farming especially, is taking part in the actual work and not depending on outside labor, namely machines, as much as we do. It's getting complicated, but I hope I made my point.
Yeah, you did.
I helped create a second farmers market in our town, which a lot of the folks that live in town really like. because they aren't able to get to the Saturday market, so they come to the Tuesday one, and I'm there again with products, and they can stock up there. But in other instances, try and host community event series. Either we're showing some films related to local farms or having roundtable discussions with the community and talking about problems the farmers face, and the community's talking about ways to possible means of helping with those problems. But I think there's a lot more that could be done that way, but it's tough as a farmer to add that all to your list. You already have this huge list of things you need to do just to produce crops. But yeah, that is another thing I tend to struggle with.
Well, for one, we are a residential facility, so we provide 1 meal a day for 35 folks that live on the farm. We also sell produce to local restaurants. We involve the school classrooms with educational programs that we have at the farm, and we sell produce to the schools. We provide about $1,500 worth of produce to the local food pantry every year, and we have a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture program, with about 30 members that come to the farm once a week for the growing season and pick up their bundles. We have a farm stand that draws in other community members, and then we run a couple of community activities throughout the year for people to attend.
Well, we speak up for them. I don't have as much direct influence in the community as I did. I served on the Conservation Commission, and we had farms in mind. We're interested in pushing open space and getting conservation easements to protect farmland.
But we also have many groups who come here to visit the farm and
Yeah, sure.
take walks, see all the animals.
Starting with kids, we have
Farm camp in the summer, and I think a lot of the community is beginning to recognize and appreciate the fact that the farm is here and they have access.
And every year we have the latest kindergarten classes that come to the farm to look and see what we're doing. So we get a new batch every year. They come by the busload.
And we're having children of people who used to visit the farm as a child.
Well, the biggest change, I think, is tapping into a customer base that isn't yet our customer base. And we're kind of seeing the effects of that right now. There's several different farms in the area, and new ones kind of coming online every day or every year. And it seems that we're all sort of jockeying for, the customers that consistently buy. We have this customer base that is actually pretty small in comparison to folks that go to the supermarkets and market baskets and Hannaford and such. So I'd like to see things change in that department as far as being able to provide some of the same convenience, I guess, as the supermarkets, because there's such a large percentage of people who either won't go to the farmer's market, won't buy from farms because they think it's too expensive, and they apparently have so much going on that they can't take the time to make those purchases, and it's just easier for them to go to market basket. So trying to maybe shift the paradigm a little. I know that's kind of a cliche, but
Right now, farmers are losing a lot of control for the quality of seeds and how they're produced, and even the varieties that they're able to get. The industrial agriculture is really taking a pretty strong hold on animal breeding lines and narrowing everything to a few varieties or breeds, and that needs to change for sure. The other thing that needs to change is how subsidies are handed out. You know, a lot of big farms that aren't necessarily producing very nutritiously quality food are given the most money versus people who are investing in the soil and investing in the food and getting healthy food to the people, are still having to pay top dollar for fertilizers and soil amendments and seed, and they're not able to get they're not retaining back what they're putting in because people aren't able to afford it. Food is too expensive to grow, and we're very out of touch with what it costs to grow, so people aren't willing to because they think that they're just being ripped off. But there's not very many farmers out there getting rich today, so it's just the big companies that are producing the soil amendments and the fertilizers and controlling that industry. So I think that needs to change.
More diversity, less monoculture, more inclusion of all the new residents of the country, because a lot of them were farmers, and they come here and live in apartments in the city and have no access to dirt. And I think we need to include them and make sure that they have a place for a garden.
seeing things grow, and knowing that, you know, I had a part in that whole process, really. And I think there's no other job like it out there. Just really seems like, you know, to have a successful farm, it's just all about making every part of that farm happy, and whether it's the animals or the plants or what have you, the family, you gotta keep your crew happy, you know, that's kind of the essence of it all. And sure, there's a lot of rough spots along the way, but, you know, the high points really overshadow those low spots, so that's why I keep doing it. And there's other reasons, but that gets down to the gist of it.
Because it's the most honest work there is. It's the hardest, one of the hardest. I wouldn't say it's the hardest, but you are very in touch with what you do, and your mistakes are very prevalent, and your successes are very big, and it's very self-satisfying because you're directly feeding yourself and directly feeding other people. So, thanks.
It's part of our blood, if you want to go. We decided it's a religion. Yeah.
Like the way we wanted to bring up our children, we wanted to have access to, we wanted to have control over what we were eating. And
More so than
what
ever.
we were doing, actually. Because here you've got so many options and so many things that you can do and can accomplish. Plus it just, I don't know, it just seemed like that was what we
might,
chose to do.